With Israelis going back for election after election, critics feel they've fingered the culprit, the way members of Knesset are elected, and specifically, Israel's system of proportional representation, the system that gives parties or lists a percentage of seats in the parliament in proportion to the percentage of votes they get on election day. As long as your party or list gets more than 3.25% of the total vote, you get into the Knesset and get a percentage of the seats basically equal to the percentage of votes that you win. So get 5% of the vote, get 5% of the seats. Get 10% of the vote, get 10% of the seats, and so on. For some Israelis, this is frustrating. It produces a system where a lot of small parties get into parliament, making it hard to put together a majority coalition that can govern. And the theory goes, giving these small parties outsized power. The last coalition had 8 parties in it, and a prime minister from a party that entered the coalition with 6 seats. And then the coalition collapsed after 1 year. And now we're back to election number 5. Better to have a system like America's or Britain's or Canada's. Carve up the country into districts, herd voters into 2 main parties, and get more stable governments. That's the case against the system. But it's misplaced, or at least it ignores the strengths of Israel's system. Israel's proportional representation has a core and essential strength: representation. Find 3.25% of the public who think like you or who have a background like yours, and your voice will be represented directly in the halls of power. For marginal groups, this is huge. For example, Bedouin in the Negev have a party, Ram, that can make or break coalitions. Or Russian-speaking pensioners have a party, Avigdor Lieberman's Yisrael Beitenu, that literally speaks their language. Proportional representation allowed ultra-Orthodox Israelis of Mizrahi or Middle Eastern descent to shake off discrimination from Ashkenazi counterparts and form the Shas party to lasting effect. Proportional representation makes the system fluid, quicker to react as new issues and new trends gain pace, allowing the cost of living issue to impact Israeli politics in the last decade, and enabling a small but crucial niche group, right-wing Israelis who reject Benjamin Netanyahu, to be represented in parliament. Israel is a cantankerous, heterogeneous country. If its system looked like America's or Britain's or Canada's, what's called first past the post, important voices in society would be left out. The marginal groups would be marginal parts of larger parties. Instead of being inside the Knesset, they would be outside the Knesset, rebelling against the system, not reveling in it. Being left out, destabilizing the country. Proportional representation gives all sections of society power. And yes, that's frustrating. Governments fall, and the ballot boxes come back out of storage again. But it's empowering, and in its own way stabilizing too. Now, there are other proposals for more modest reforms of Israel's system. Some might be a good idea. But don't get hypnotized by the first past the post crowd. Proportional representation means Israel's politics look like Israel itself. And even with all the angst and all the constant elections, that actually makes Israel stronger. And its democracy more stable.